A very warm good evening to you, and thank you for joining me for your favorite program, Global Watch, where we take a look at some of the news that made headlines across the globe. My name is Eddie Nyadwa. What's in a handshake? In a historic meeting, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un crossed on foot the demilitarized zone and was welcomed by South Korea leader Moon Jae into South Korea. It's been over 10 years since the leader of the two countries met, and Kim's eagerness to negotiate is sparking some optimism over United Korea.
It has been a day full of extraordinary moments and images, and it started with this one. The supreme leader of North Korea walking across the dividing line into the south. Kim Jong-un then grabbed the hand of South Korean President Moon Jae-in, and together they stepped back, for a moment, onto North Korean soil. As their summit meeting began, they sat across a table exactly 2,018 millimeters wide. The backdrop, a huge painting of a famous North Korean mountain range. Immediately, President Moon set the tone, telling Kim Jong-un he had been brave to make the journey south. As the day rolled on, more extraordinary images have continued. Kim's limousine scooting back and forth across the dividing line, his personal bodyguards running alongside. The two leaders planting a tree with soil and water brought from the north and the south. But perhaps the most fascinating moment of all was their afternoon stroll. Sitting for nearly half an hour on a bridge sipping tea, deep in what appears to have been animated conversation. It is a massive contrast to what started with one of the most brutal wars of the 20th century. In 1953, a truce was signed at exactly the same place the two leaders met today. But the conflict has never ended. Just a few months ago, it really looked like military conflict might break out again, as Kim Jong-un launched ever more powerful missiles and tested ever larger nuclear devices. Today, just 4 months later, the two leaders emerged from their summit to declare their intention to end the conflict permanently.
There will be no Korean War. A new era of peace will open. We've suffered so much, but now we stand together. Mr. Kim and I agree to have the Korean Peninsula without any nuclear arsenal.
We cannot be separated. We are one nation. When we met, we realized we cannot be parted. We are one nation.
I don't think peace will be right away, but will be slowly. Hopefully we can go North Korea, they can come South Korea, we can helping each other, we can build up together. I think everybody wants that.
I hope they get together, and then probably it's gonna take a long time, but step by step, I think it's a great opportunity this time.
I don't have a lot of hope in the meeting because everyone, the UN and other governments have been trying to get involved with North Korea and trying to solve its problems since decades ago, and it's never been fixed, and there's never been any real progress so far. And I don't think, to be honest, in my opinion, I don't think this meeting would make a huge difference.
Kimchi, I think this meeting here is a preparation for the end game, which is the one that Trump's going to hold with Kim Jong-un. I think what peace will mean for both North and South Korea is fairly similar to what peace meant, or the breaking down of the walls between East and West Germany. I think there's hope that people will start feeling like they can just get on with the usual things of life that we all in this country, for example, take for granted.
Now, the handshake between the North Korea and the South Korean leader has sparked a lot of optimism that indeed Kim Jong-un is actually very honest in his move to shut down this nuclear program and also to make peace with his neighbors. And now we cross over to the US, where the United States President Donald Trump has warned Iran not to restart its nuclear program, saying that if they restart their nuclear program, they will have bigger problems that they've ever had before. Trump issued the cautionary statement alongside the French President Emmanuel Macron in the Oval Office, where the two allies met and discussed Iran nuclear deal, the crisis in Syria, and a number of issues during the meeting at the White House. According to Trump, the Iran deal is terrible.
Thank you,
what would you like to say about Iran during your talk with the president?
Well, we'll be talking about Iran, and we'll be talking about many things, terrorism generally, but we will be discussing the Iran deal. People know my views on the Iran deal. It was a terrible deal. It should have never, ever been made. We could have made a good deal or a reasonable deal. The Iran deal is a terrible deal. We paid $150 billion. We gave $1.8 billion in cash. That's actual cash, barrels of cash. It's insane. It's ridiculous. It should have never been made. But we will be talking about it.
Iran deal is an important issue. We will discuss about that. But we have to take it as a part of a broader picture,
Sure.
which is security in the overall region. And we have a Syrian situation. We have upcoming election in Iraq. We have the stability to preserve for our allies in the region. And what we want to do is to contain the Iranian presence in the region. And JCPOA is part of this broader picture. Thank you.
It just seems that no matter where you go, especially in the Middle East, Iran is behind it. Wherever there's trouble, Yemen, Syria, no matter where you have it, Iran is behind it. And now, unfortunately, Russia is getting more and more involved. But Iran seems to be behind everything where there's a problem. And you just have to take a look. You look at what's happening. You look at the fighters. Iran is always there. And we're not going to allow certain things to happen that are happening. And the Iran deal is a disaster. They're testing missiles. And what is that all about? You look at the ballistic missiles that they're going and testing. What kind of a deal is it where you're allowed to test missiles all over the place? It won't be so easy for them to restart. They're not going to be restarting anything. They restart it, they're going to have big problems, bigger than they've ever had before. And you can mark it down. They restart their nuclear program, they will have bigger problems than they have ever had before. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Still on the issue of the Iran nuclear deal is that the Iran representative at the United Nations told the UN Nuclear Non-Proliferation Conference in Geneva that Iran's landmark nuclear deal with world powers will not be renegotiated or altered. US President Donald Trump has vowed to withdraw from the deal by May 12th unless the US, British, French and German negotiators can agree to fix what he sees as serious flaws in the deal.
And in the interest of providing
accomplish the total elimination of nuclear weapons without further delay.
The JCPOA will not be renegotiated or altered. The US will be responsible for any consequences of its reckless policies against the JCPOA. The US policy on the JCPOA sends an unambiguous message to others that the US is not a reliable party in any bilateral or multilateral agreement, and it cannot be trusted.
her statement and also for the kind words addressed to the chair.
And still sticking with the Iran deal is that the Iran Foreign Secretary has warned the United States against withdrawing from the nuclear deal, saying that with the withdrawal will undermine talks with North Korea by proving that America renegates on its agreements.
Our policy has been, we have welcomed any reduction of tension in the Korean Peninsula, and we welcome any possibility that would lead to the reduction of tension in the Korean Peninsula. What the United States, what President Trump has made the international community aware of is the fact that the United States is not a trustworthy, reliable negotiating partner, because you reach an agreement with them, and an agreement by definition would require give and take. They're prepared to take everything that you've given, but then renege on the promises that they have made in the deal. That makes the United States a rather unlikely partner in any international agreement. And unfortunately, the track record is not just limited to the nuclear deal. It includes the Paris Climate Agreement, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and a lot of other freely undertaken commitments of the United States. We've said that the United States has not lived up to its side of the bargain, that is, to its commitments, to lift certain sanctions, not to impede economic relations between Iran and its economic partners. It has done all of that. It has prevented, basically dissuaded, threatened companies from engaging with Iran. So the economic benefits of the nuclear deal have not been at the level that had been promised, not expected, promised in writing in the nuclear deal in JCPOA. But if the US were not to renew the waivers, it would be basically destroying the deal. How Iran would react to it would depend on the national decision-making process as well as other elements. But the most likely reaction would be there won't be any reason, there won't be any deal for Iran to stay in.
Still, with matters far afield is that the United Nations Secretary General Mr. Antonio has said that there is no military solution to the Syrian crisis. The UN chief said that the crisis can only be solved politically. He was speaking while in southern Sweden, where he met with the UN Security Council ambassadors for an informal working meeting. The retreat in Bakara comes just weeks after France, the US and Great Britain bombed suspected Syrian chemical weapon sites, saying that Syrian president was behind an alleged chemical weapons attack in the town of Douma.
I think we need in Syria essentially two things. First, to understand that there is no military solution for the Syrian conflict. The solution is political. And the way for a political solution is known. It is a resolution of the Security Council. Its number is 2254, with a communique in Geneva, and it is through the intra-Syrian talks between government and opposition to be able to overcome the differences that exist. And the second thing is that we really need to find a way to, in relation to the violations of international law that the use of chemical weapons represent, we really need to find a way, we need accountability exists. We cannot go on living with impunity in relation to what it is clearly a war crime that should have disappeared from the face of the earth.
Your thoughts on North Korea, Secretary General?
I think there is hope. I believe that if things go well, and I hope things will go well, they will prove that the Security Council can be effective when it is united. The problem is that in many aspects, namely in Syria, we have not yet been able to have a united Security Council, but when the Security Council is united and adopts together important measures, they have an impact on the ground and they make things change. And today, I believe in North Korea, the path is open for the peaceful denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And it also proves that diplomacy is the way to solve conflicts. It's not war. It's diplomacy.
And back to the US is that United States President Donald Trump and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron toasted to continue warm relations between their two countries. Macron was honored last week at his first state dinner of Trump administration. In his toast, Trump said that their friendship grow and even deepen, and that their kinship grow even stronger. Relations between the US and France date to the American Revolution nearly 250 years back. Macron, who spoke in French, thanked Trump for making him the first world leader honored with a state visit.
Members of the French delegation and distinguished guests, the wonderful friendship we have developed over the last year is a testament to the enduring friendship that binds our two nations. It is truly fitting that we are holding our first official state visit with the leader of America's oldest ally.
Monsieur le Président, Mélania et moi avons été honorés de...
This morning, we all send our prayers to the Bush family as we wish former President George H.W. Bush a very speedy recovery. I also want to express our deepest sympathies to the Canadian people following the horrendous tragedy in Toronto that claimed so many innocent lives. Our hearts are with the grieving families in Canada. Of France for the American cause. Decades later,
c'est ensemble que les États-Unis et la France parviendront à vaincre le terrorisme. La France et l'Amérique y sont toutes deux confrontées. sous des formes diverses, sur nos sols respectifs, au Levant ou en Afrique. C'est ensemble que nous endiguerons la prolifération des armes de destruction massive, que ce soit en Corée du Nord ou en Iran. Chère Mélania, chère Brigitte, Mesdames et Messieurs distingués invités, c'est ensemble que nous pourrons œuvrer efficacement pour notre planète. Je ne parle...
Mesdames et Messieurs, dear distinguished guests, thank you for your warm welcome.
C'est ensemble que nous pourrons résister à la montée des nationalismes agressifs, niant notre histoire et fracturant le monde. C'est ensemble que nous construirons un nouveau multilatéralisme fort, défenseur du pluralisme et de la démocratie, tandis que se lèvent les vents mauvais.
Long live the United States, long live France. Thank you.
Compassionate, loving, charming, greatest First Lady of our generation were just some of the words used to describe the former First Lady, Barbara Bush. It was a funeral attended by 4 former US presidents and hundreds of other people who filled the church with laughter as much as tears, with many recalling her quick wit and devotion to family. Bush died aged 92 years, with her husband beside her.
And no man dieth to himself, for if we live unto the Lord, and if we die unto the Lord. Whether we live, therefore, or die, we are the Lord.
Known as Barbara, as Bar, as Mom, as Mother, as Ganny, as the Silver Fox, and as the Enforcer, she was candid and comforting, steadfast and straightforward, honest and loving. Barbara Bush was the First Lady of the greatest generation. In the great adventure of post-war Texas, moving to distant Odessa in 1948. Instinctively generous, Barbara and George Bush put country above party, the common good above political gain, and service to others above the settling of scores. The couple had met at a Christmas dance in Greenwich in 1941, not quite 3 weeks after Pearl Harbor. She was wearing a red and green holiday dress. He endeavored to get introduced. She was 16, he was 17. He was the only boy she ever kissed. Her children, she remarked, always wanted to throw up when they heard that. In a letter to Barbara during the war, George H.W. Bush wrote,
"The world saw a compassionate but strict mother who inspired her children with tender love and firm lessons, and when needed, the fear of God. When we saw her and George together with their 5 children, with their 17 grandchildren and 7 great-grands, we knew they represented the very best. As we watched their brood wisecrack with one another or work together on a volunteer program or campaign, we thought how wonderful it would be if more families could be so cohesive." Barbara, the tough but loving enforcer, was the secret sauce of this extraordinary family.
She loved the story of how when her elder, as well as an adult male patient.
The little things we learned became habits, and they led to bigger things like be kind, always tell the truth, never disparage anyone, serve others, treat everyone as you would want to be treated, and love your God with your heart and soul. What a blessing to have a teacher like that 24/7. Now, to be clear, her students weren't perfect. That's an understatement. Mom got us through our difficult times with consistent, take it to the bank, unconditional, but tough love. She called her style a benevolent dictatorship, but honestly, it wasn't always benevolent.
He was nervous. Mrs. Bush asked if it would help if they read it together on the broadcast.
We learn to strive to be genuine and authentic by the best role model in the world. Her authentic plastic pearls, her not culling her hair. By the way, she was beautiful till the day she died. Her hugging of an HIV/AIDS patient at a time when her own mother wouldn't do it. Her standing by her man with a little rhyming poetry in the 1984 election. In 1,000 other ways, Barbara Pierce Bush was real, and that's why people admired her and loved her so. Finally, our family has had a front row seat for the most amazing love story.
May her soul rest in eternal peace. Now moving back to Africa, news is that Zimbabwe has become the second African nation to legalize marijuana for medical and scientific purposes. Health Minister Dr. David Parie Nyetwa said individuals and businesses will be able to apply for licenses to cultivate cannabis sativa. The licenses will be valid for 5 years and will also allow growers to possess, transport and sell fresh cannabis, cannabis oil and the dried product. However, the legalization of the herb has sparked sharp criticism.
It's going to be abused badly by the young kids. If they are using marijuana now, when it is legal, what more if it comes in? Or if we are growing it here, it will be a disaster, my friend.
It's plugged into drug abuse is akawanda.
As we speak, our nation is battling many cases of drug abuse. There are lots of young children wandering the streets using drugs, and I feel legalizing cannabis will only make things worse.
Yes, I think there's nothing wrong about that because it's a crop and it's a way of getting foreign currency than to take foreign counts outside.
Even though it's illegal now, people can still access cannabis. I do not see many cases of people starting to smoke just because it has been legalized. Besides, it is for medical purposes only.
Now in Africa, it's only Lesotho and now Zimbabwe that have legalized marijuana. We only hope that in those countries, marijuana will actually be used for both scientific and medical purposes. Now we cross over to West Africa, where Nigeria's Senate has begun the process of impeaching President Muhammadu Buhari. This is in relation to the procurement of warplanes in fight against Boko Haram. The Senate has voted in favor of impeachment. The matter now goes to a legal and judiciary committee for review to see whether there is any legal backing for the process.
Peaceable offense, and we cannot allow that. We cannot stay here and Nigerians will be, the assembly will be taking.
There are serious consequences for violation of our constitution. Now, this is, we are between agreeing to performing a function that the president has done on behalf of this country, which is quite objective, but at the same time, a violation which of course is our constitution that we have all sworn to uphold.
We have seen so much bloodshed. There's a need for us not to circumvent the Constitution, not to circumvent the laws of the land, in an attempt to achieve some certain ends. So in my own way, I do not think we should impeach the president, but we should demand that the money be returned to follow due process to the end.
By Section 82 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, the president has the powers, to authorize the withdrawal from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation amount which may not, or which must not be more than the same amount in the preceding year as approved by the National Assembly. That provision, Section 82, is very clear. So I've not seen anything the president has actually done to call for the issue of the impeachment.
Malawi's former president Joyce Banda has returned to the country after nearly 4 years